Okay, Brandon. Uh, this is how. Sorry for the shaky quality. I'm doing it myself, and I'm trying to hold it and get the screen. Okay, I'll turn it this way. Uh, First thing I do is I clear my memory out by going to the master module and hitting 4. Erase all memory. Yeah. Create default preset. Yes. Hit the master key again, and it shows you that we only have one preset in the bank in the sampler right now. By default, it's P00 preset 0 untitled. You can rename it or whatever. I haven't sampled anything into it yet. Next, I want to go to preset management and hit the number 3. Create a new preset. Hit, 3. And then the display says create preset 01. I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, and then after you hit enter that first time, it gives you the option to rename the P01, the P01 new preset that we created. But I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm gonna just go by the number to know what preset I'm working in. So I hit enter. Oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally changed it, that U to a 0, but that's no biggie. Okay, I'm gonna hit enter. Then I come out of the preset management screen to see what preset we're in right now. And right now we're in P01. So I'm gonna use the yes and no key to move through to select my preset. And I'm gonna use the no key to go back to the P00 preset, select it. Now this is where I'm gonna sample the whole break into. And through a process of copying and truncating, this is how we're gonna chop our sample. But I'm gonna sample the whole break in P00. Okay, so go to my sample module, sample, and I hit number 1 so I can see where my meters are, how much gain I'm applying to the input. It's at 0, which is good. Sometimes it's set to like 40 or whatever, and you get a lot of noise. See that noise floor rising when you're on 40. So I'm gonna put it back at 0 dB, and then I'm gonna go up to my sample. I'm gonna play my sample so I can check my levels. This is the sample. This is that the Mad Lads Get Out My Life Woman break. I'm gonna play it, and then I'm gonna check the levels on the Emax VU meter. Okay. Now let's see what the meters are. Okay, glare. Trying not to get so much glare. That look good. I'm gonna stop the sample now. And I'm still in the sample module. So what I want to do now is to set the threshold so that once the threshold is exceeded, then it'll start sampling the break. And to set the threshold while you're in the sample module, you hit the number 5, and it says use slider to set the threshold. You can use the data slider, but I like to use the yes and no buttons to do that. I don't know if you can see that bar above. The bottom bar is stationary. The bottom bar is moving. That's our threshold. I'm gonna set it right about there because the sample is gonna come in hot, and it's gonna set that off, and it's gonna start sampling. What I like to do next is to select the sample rate. To select the sample rate, you hit the number 3 while in the sample module 3, and it brings up the sample rate. You can use the data slider, or you can use the yes and no buttons to select your sample rate. And again, I like to use the yes and no buttons. I'm gonna set it for 20 kilohertz. If anybody is wondering, in my opinion, 16 kilohertz is the closest. Sorry about the shaking. 16 kilohertz is the closest, in my opinion, to the sound of the SP12 and 1200. 20 if you're pitching up your samples on the table, +8 at 45 RPM. If you're just sampling straight in at regular speed, regular playback speed, 16 is it, in my opinion. I'm gonna leave that at 20 kilohertz. Okay, so far we've decided that we're gonna sample into preset 00. We're gonna sample the whole break. We set our threshold. We set our sample rate. The next thing we need to do, or that I like to do, is to set the assignment, where the sample is going to be placed on the keyboard, on the drum machine, or whatever. You hit 2, and that'll bring up this page. That P/S, that's primary and secondary. That's for layering. Your primary is usually where you place your first sample, and then you can place another sample underneath it to thicken a kick drum or a snare drum or whatever. The PRI right here indicates that we're sampling into the primary layer. The original is the key that's the key or pad that the sample will play back at the pitch that you sampled it at when you took the sample. The low is the lowest pitch that sample is mapped to and will play back. The high is like this, but it's the highest, and that's for say you sample a bass note. You can sample the bass note on C3 and have the low, and that'll be the original pitch, the sample, the pitch at which you took the sample, and then you can set the low key for that sample to something like F2, and the high key can be B3, and you can, it's like multi-pitching. You can take one sample and multi-pitch it, spread across pads or keys. But for the sake of this video, since we chopping drums, and drums aren't really pitched like that, I'm gonna set this, the entire range, original, low, high, are all going to be on the same key or pad. In this case, I'm using a controller keyboard, and I'm going to set it to C1 all the way across for the original pitch, the low pitch, and the high pitch. So you move the cursor. I don't know if you can see that. It's blinking under the C3 at the original pitch. Move it there, then hit the pad or key you want to assign the original, you want to assign the drum to. C1, you move it over to the low field, hit the key again, C1, hit the key, move it over, move the cursor over to the high field and hit the key again, C1, enter. Okay, that brings you back to the sample screen. Okay, recap. So we decided that we're going to sample into the P00 preset. We set our sample rate, set the threshold, we set the location for the sample. Now we can go back to the, what they call the VU meter mode, so we can see our signal coming in. And to do that, you hit 1. Now we're back at VU mode. Play the sample again. We're going to check our levels. Still good. Stop the sample. Now we set our threshold earlier. See it? To arm it so that sampling starts once the threshold is passed, or broken, we hit 6. Sample armed. Play back the sample. Just want to note that I could have set the sample time by hitting 4 while we went in sample module, but I just went ahead and armed the sample, and I stopped sampling once I had enough of the sample to do what I wanted to do by hitting the number 8. Number 8 is stop sampling. Okay, so now it's time to edit the sample. Do that, you go to digital processing. It tells you to select the key, select the voice. Okay. I hit number 1 to start truncating. No, actually, hold up.